One of the biggest fantasy draft weekends of the year. I'd imagine this week, next weekend are probably two of the most popular weeks of the year for drafts. I got a couple. I know the guys in here have a couple. I got to get my guillotine league scheduled as well. That's going to be probably like day before the season, I would expect. You get some cramming there. Now on the Wester Hotline, as we talk some fantasy, Ian Hartitz from Fantasy Life, fellow passenger on the Jordan Mason hype train, joins us on the Wester Hotline. Morning, Ian. Thanks for hopping on.
Good morning, man. Appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, Jordan Mason, no matter what, get your sticky note out for all these drafts.
I believe I have him now in every league I've drafted. Jordan Mason of the Vikings, for those that are maybe catching up on where he got to. And we'll obviously get to the Bills, Ian, but I've seen you write about him too, that Mason is all the advanced numbers are great, and he's in an offense now where I don't really think Aaron Jones has to keep that job forever. So I just feel like it's made sense all summer.
Everything we've heard from Kevin O'Connell, the beat reporters, even just, again, practice usage and stuff is telling us it's going to be far more of a 1A, 1B situation, probably a lot more similar to what Aaron Jones was doing in Green Bay with the Jamal Williams and A.J. Dillons of the world over the last few years. So you said it, man. I mean, Jordan Mason taking over for CMC first half of last year had more rushing yards than anyone not named Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley during the first 8 weeks. So Vikings did a good job at sprucing up their offensive line. I just think Mason right now is pretty much like a cheaper version of David Montgomery. I mean, for anyone drafting on ESPN, guys, pick 140, RB 39. So he's being priced as this pure handcuff next to guys like Tyler Algier and Trey Benson, yet I actually think we can get some flex value out of it. So Jordan Mason, again, love that ADP. And the range of the draft for people usually just taking backups anyway.
Ian Hartitz with us on the Wester Hotline. So we'll get to a couple other around the league things after we talk some Bills here. If you want to check out Ian's stuff, Fantasy Life Show, fantasylife.com. He wrote about his My Guys the other day, and that's where I wanted to start. Mason was one of them. Keon Coleman was another, Ian, and we spent a lot of today talking about Coleman and like what the ceiling could be for him this season. You like him, you're drafting him. How are you arriving at a place where you're picking him in a lot of your leagues?
Again, a lot of this does come down to where they're going. I always say don't hate the player, hate the ADP. And right now, Keon's ADP is absolutely great. I mean, he's going outside the top 50 wide receivers. And, yeah, I understand he wasn't the, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr. sort of game-breaking rookie. But at the same time, you guys also have the same games I did. I mean, it really did seem like he was starting to break out weeks 7 and 8. Unfortunately, had that midseason hand and wrist injury that took him out. And then once he came back, Mac Hollins, Amari Cooper, shortening up his reps a little bit. So, end of the day, I mean, I would not be surprised, and I'm sure you guys wouldn't either, if Khalil Shakir is still the number one overall target. But if we had to take a bet on who's going to lead the team in deep ball opportunities, probably Keon. He did so last year. And then even the red zone, end zone targets. I mean, maybe Kincaid gets there, but for my money's worth, I would be going with Keon. So we can draft Josh Allen's primary deep ball and red zone specialist outside the top 50. I mean, this is sub-Gabe Davis prices from even a few years ago. So, again, I just think even if Keon is going to be taking a big step forward, which is possible, he's still only 22 years old. Last time I checked, it's illegal for these guys to get better at football. The more experience they get, I just think, again, at that price point really does have a lot more upside than he's being given credit for.
Yeah, what I wonder about him is how the Bills will, if they will change at all how they utilize him. No Mac Hollins, so maybe there's more of the dirty work, the blocking on the table for him. But I think what we saw last year, Ian, was like the jump balls are pretty, but they're kind of inefficient. Is what you saw last year. He was a punt returner in college, and I felt like multiple times when he had the ball in his hands short, you saw him creating after. So that's one area. And then also like red zone. I mean, because really, if he pops in fantasy this year, I'd imagine, that probably was started with him getting, 9-10 touchdowns.
Yeah, 100%. I do think he is a good candidate looking at the sort of players, the Rashad Batemans of the world. He was kind of this, again, wide receiver 5 last year, wound up getting the double-digit touchdown season going. He's in the right offense to do so, right? So, again, Keon should be able to hopefully be Josh's primary fade guy in the tight areas of the field. But love that you brought up the ability after the catch, because that is the other selling point here. We have a guy who obviously can win those 50-50 situations, but was so impressive what he was doing after the catch. I mean, took that curl to the house against the Texans, had that sweet slant against the Titans where he broke a few tackles. Ultimately, per next-gen stats, Keon was the number one wide receiver in yards after the catch, above expected per reception last year. So the only other guys to do that since 2018 have been Deebo Samuel, DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, and Jalen Waddle. So really good company there for Keon. And again, I would love to see the guys separate a bit more too. But when he drafted, everyone seemed to be in agreement that he was a bit more of a project wide receiver than normal. So we got the athletic ability. We know he can go up there and get it. He seems to have that dog in him as well. Let's get, a little bit more polished routes, hopefully year 2 in the system, and we'll see what happens.
And everyone said, most reports so far, that camp has gone really well for him. So we'll see if that translates to the regular season. Ian Hartitz with us, the Fantasy Life Show, fantasylife.com. So elsewhere on the Bills' fantasy questions, I would wonder about James Cook and what you see his upside of being, where he's being drafted. My wonder, Ian, is can it match what it was last year without the touchdowns being the same? He was, depending on where you look, like RB8 last season with 16 touchdowns. And that kind of leads me to think, well, that's the best case scenario. And do I want to be drafting a guy that early where it feels like if everything goes right, that it's going to be RB8 ranking overall? Or maybe you think there's more workload coming in other areas?
It was just wild to see how it worked out for him last year, because I was drafting a good amount of James Cook last season, but if you would have told me he was going to finish with 42 fewer touches that he had in 2023, I just would have assumed that I kind of whiffed on that pick. When you mentioned that, man, scoring all those touchdowns, things worked out just fine. So, again, RB11 on a per-game basis last year. The year before, he was RB19. So the fact you can buy him as kind of close to that RB15 range, I think it's a pretty nice sweet spot for the guy. And, hey, if the touchdowns do end up decreasing, hopefully the receiving workload gets going again, because, I mean, that really has been the one part of his game that I feel like hasn't been totally tapped into. Now, I've seen it, guys. There have legit been 4 or 5 drop touchdowns usually on those wheels over the past 2 seasons. But I always say, kind of like talking about Will Fuller back in the day, as bad as it sucks to see these guys dropping touchdowns, you got to be pretty freaking good to get open enough to drop a touchdown in the first place. So I still do think James Cook is a plus receiver. I know they have Ty Johnson to help do a lot of that third down work as well, but man, they just paid him. So if there was ever be a time to maybe spruce up, give him an extra few touches per game, take him for more of a 200, 210 carry guy, getting more closer to 300 or so, that would be a situation where we could maybe see him boom. But it is always going to be tough with Josh Allen at the goal line, taking those kind of tush-push touchdowns similar to Jalen Hurts. But for me, the way for him to kind of overcome some of that touchdown regression, if you will, would be just getting more work in the receiving game, which we know he's capable of, just maybe need a little bit more consistency.
The last bill I would want to get with you on is Dalton Kincaid, and I guess maybe that comes down to how you're drafting tight ends this year. I'm finding myself doing it early, either Kittle early on, or if I have a chance to get McBride, and not waiting on the position. If you do wait on the position, or maybe it doesn't fall your way, do you like Kincaid as one of those back end tight end 1 options, or are there a lot of other guys you like more?
No, I think he's exactly that sort of late-round dart that you can feel okay about. The price is cheap enough this year and not worry as much. Last year, Kincaid was going tight end 6 in a lot of these drafts, so certainly had to spend a pretty penny to get him there. But basically, I'm kind of taking the Ricky Bobby first or last approach at quarterback and tight end this year. If you want to think about barbell as well, that's fine. If you want to go early and get one of the studs, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle, as you mentioned, or one of these dual-threat alien quarterbacks like your Josh Allen. It's that middle range that I'm not going to be going out of my way for. As much as Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson, okay, they deserve to be tight end 4, tight end 5. I just think that when they were going 50, 60-plus picks ahead of some of these other guys going, after the pick 100, I'm more willing to wait because there are still such good running backs and wide receivers on the board throughout those middle rounds. So for me, that kind of first range of tight ends I really want to attack is actually going to be Packers, Tucker Kraft, and we also have the first-round rookies in Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. But right after them, you have the Jake Fergusons and Dalton Kincaids of the world. And, it is one of these situations where anyone that's been playing fantasy, you've been hurt by Kyle Pitts a few times over these past few years. So I'm hoping Dalton Kincaid isn't quite on that same sort of trajectory. But it is a position where we regularly see it take a little bit longer to produce these high-end numbers, both in real life and fantasy. So we've gotten spoiled by Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers over these last 2 years. But, it just takes Kincaid till year 3 for him to actually put together a big season. Wouldn't be the biggest anomaly that position has ever seen.
Has Kyle Pitts become more memeable than any fantasy player ever? Or is that just my algorithm making jokes about people that draft Kyle Pitts? Maybe that's all it
I've
is.
seen so much of it too, man. He is going cheaper than ever at this point. We'll see if Darnell Mooney's going to be able to get out there. This Michael Penix guy, I think the verdict is very much out, and if he's going to be a great real-life quarterback. But that dude, he's got a little bit of that rookie second-year Josh Allen in him, where no window looks too small for him to attempt to squeeze a pass in there. So I could see the Falcons being, maybe a middle-class man's version of like the Bengals in the NFC, because Lord knows that defense hasn't stopped many over the years. And, hey, Penix is a gunslinger at heart.
Yeah. Throw some totals on that. I've been looking at that more this year than ever. How good is the defense for volume on the other side? I mean, the Bengals are like the most extreme example of that, and maybe some teams it's tougher to even project it. I don't know how much you incorporate that, though, like for every player is this going to be the type of team where they're going to be running a lot of plays and playing catch-up because the defense is that poor?
Oh, no, it definitely matters. I mean, more so with the projections, but I was talking to our guy, John McFarland, who does our projections at Fantasy Life the other day, and he was talking about how George Pickens actually coming over to the Cowboys. On the one hand, okay, now you have CeeDee Lamb there. Pickens isn't going to be the number one, but because of how slow the Steelers move and their run-first philosophy, I mean, we literally have the Cowboys projected to have 2 extra games worth of pass attempts than the Steelers this year. So it seems like more than enough ground for Pickens to make up. But, hey, that's another team where, again, I do think if we're using kind of the Bengals as this really good offense with a horrible defense, the Cowboys are matching that too, even to the point where they're taking it too seriously, and now they've pissed off their star edge rusher, Micah Parsons, just like Henderson over there in Cincy. So picking CD Dak, man, I'm not saying the Cowboys are going to be good in real life this year, but really should be appointment red zone viewing, and I think you could be pretty happy if you have these pass catchers on your fantasy squad.
I mean, I got a long shot Dak MVP bet for these reasons, just because of if they make it and the totals are through the roof, then you never know. Part of that was what the odds were, too. Ian Hartitz with us from FantasyLife.com. A couple other around the league things I wanted to rip through with you real quick. Joe Flacco starting in Cleveland, like that was kind of expected, but this is good, right, for all the Cleveland fantasy players involved?
Oh, it's great. I mean, especially relative to the other options, which are a pair of very unproven rookies and Kenny freaking Pickett out here. So with Flacco, man, over these past 2 years, the turnovers have been there. I mean, he rolled off his couch, got the next chance, got probably final chance to be in the NFL. And I mean, he's going down shooting, man. This dude is throwing the ball to his heart's desire, basically like another version of Jameis out there the way he's been playing. But if you do control for the games where Flacco has been, just coming in late or coming in for an injured Anthony Richardson, he actually has more passing yards per game than Joe freaking Burrow over these past 2 seasons. So David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, even Cedric Tillman, I do think the Browns are going to have some opportunities to put up some pass game numbers as long as they do give Flacco the chance to start. That said, just long term, unless Flacco is just absolutely killing it, which to the guy's credit, he was down the stretch in 2023, I do think they're going to be turning back to Pickett or finding out what they have in these rookies sooner rather than later. So fun September, and hey, Browns got the Bengals in week 1, man. That should be a pretty fun shootout right there.
The Rams, Stafford's back practicing with his back injury. Are you hesitant at all to go in on any of those highly priced Rams players because of Stafford and the possibility that, if it flares up or he's missing games, that the whole thing maybe doesn't look the same?
I think Puka and the way they use him near the line of scrimmage is as QB-proof as you could ask for. Kyron and Davante Adams, if you want to use it as more of a tiebreaker, I mean, they are going round 3, round 4. There's plenty of other awesome players. So I would not besmirk, anyone for choosing to do that. I will say, look, Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm not going to sit here and try to, be the biggest Jimmy G apologist in the world. But if you had to go team by team and rank these backup quarterbacks, Jimmy G is going to come out near the top. It is funny to me how we're acting like, no Stafford going to Garoppolo. It's going to be like the Rams going from this top 5 offense to looking like the Saints when Jimmy G literally leads the NFL history in yards per attempt. So he's a system quarterback. I get it. But, man, that Rams system with Sean McVay, with Puka, with Davante Adams, I wouldn't exactly put them in the Eagles or the Vikings tier of teams where, again, just the most QB-friendly offensive environments out there. But Rams are probably in that top 5, top 6. So, again, Puka, number 1 for sure. But if you do see Davante or Kyron slotting, man, I would not let them get into anything close to round 5.
And then the Commanders, so it looks like they're going to trade Brian Robinson. Bill, Krosky, Merritt, or in your apps, Jacory, if you're looking for him. How far would you go to pick him? They did announce Chris Rodriguez as the starter the other day. He's a veteran there. They have Eckler, but how far would you go to draft the 7th round rookie?
I still like Jamar Chase 101, but after that, no. Look, I do think that it's a great opportunity for the guy, and it is one of these test runs where, we see these guys pop up every few years. James Robinson, back in 2020 or whatever it was. So just because you haven't heard of the guy until now doesn't necessarily make him a fade by any stretch of the imagination. I would just caution with expecting too high of highs. We still are going to have Austin Eckler there taking most of that fantasy-friendly pass-down work, and not quite as extreme as Josh Allen, but still a dual-threat quarterback in Jaden Daniels, where he's going to be scrambling more instead of checking the ball down. He is also one of these quarterbacks who can make things happen on his own inside the 5-yard line. So Bill Crosby-Merritt, someone who, again, went from a complete unknown. Now he's up there in kind of that RB3 range next to dudes like Tyron Tracy, Quinshon Judkins, with everything he's got going on. So, again, wouldn't be going out of my way for the guy necessarily. Chris Rodriguez, I think, as you mentioned, is going to still have a little bit of a role. But, man, training camp hype, continues to be out of control, and I'd be remiss if I didn't get at least a few shares in the middle rounds.
Last thing for you. So fantasylife.com, I've seen that you guys do cover guillotine a little bit and different strategies on that. It's becoming a little more mainstream. Like I know the apps are starting to implement it and the different sites are starting to do it automatically, which is a guillotine commissioner is great news, so I don't have to do everything manually. Do you have any advice or simple tips or tricks for somebody that might be doing it for the first time?
Yeah, I would just say, the kind of rule of thumb is don't worry as much about rookies and don't be afraid to take some of the more boring veterans out there, right? Your Cooper Kupps of the world, even Adam Thielen at this point in time. Once you get in these middle rounds, particularly if you are in a guillotine league where you have 18 different squads out there, it gets ugly in a hurry. So as much as you love these rookies and maybe these handcuffed guys, God forbid, an injured player who could be back before too long, again, it really is a situation where you're just playing to survive that next week. So you definitely don't want to get too cute early on in those drafts. But I couldn't agree with you more, man. I love these guillotine leagues because just as someone who's in way too many fantasy leagues to begin with, I'm setting 20 different waiver wires and going through the Will Shipleys and these RB3s and RB4s of the world. You get to a guillotine league and it's like, oh my gosh, CeeDee Lamb's a free agent. Jalen Hurts is a free agent. Like, it's just such a blessing. And, sometimes we draft bad fantasy teams. That happens. Well, at least in guillotine, man, you lose and your season's done. You don't have to continue dragging along that corpse for the next 16 weeks of the year. So love guillotine, man. I'm happy that you've seen the good news yourself.
Definitely. Monday nights especially, like I feel like the league itself is always more plugged in on the other matchups. Like if I'm safe or, half the league is safe, I feel like they are still into it to see like, okay, Josh and Owen they're within 1 point of each other. I got to see who's out. I feel like that, especially in the regular season, much more true in a guillotine league than any other league.
Yeah, man, because think about it, a normal week. Half the league is going to go home happy because you got the win. Half is going to be really upset because you didn't get the win. Guillotine, if you have 18 guys, 17 are going to be happy after week one because they went to one shop. So, again, really is a fun format. And you also don't even need 18. You can do 2 separate seasons of 8. I mean, again, so many possibilities and just all the cool stuff. So we do have guillotine leagues and plenty of content over at fantasylife.com. So if anyone is trying to dip their toes in that water, man, could not recommend doing so enough.
FantasyLife.com, the Fantasy Life Show. You can check that out wherever you get your podcasts if you're looking to cram before your fantasy draft. Thanks, Ian, as always, and maybe we'll talk once the season gets rolling.
Thank you, man. Go Bills.